Rocky Creed franchise is famous for its iconic final fights, but which one is the best? Today I'm going to stop and rank all 9 Rocky Creed final fights from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of all 9 final fights. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list and I would love to see yours. If you don't know, Rocky Balboa is my favorite movie character of all time. The Rocky Creed franchise is one of my absolute favorite movie franchises of all time. I think the Creed trilogy is an excellent continuation of the set of movies that I grew up watching, so I love all of these fights. So even if one is at the bottom, doesn't mean that I don't love it. One quick announcement, I'm going to be at Fan Expo Cleveland at the end of this month with John Flickinger and Austin Burke, as well as MegaCon in Orlando with a bunch of other YouTubers. Very excited about both events. If you're in the area of Cleveland or Orlando, I would love to meet you there, and let's get started. In last place, Rocky V. A final fight can really only be as good as the setup, as good as the foundation that's been laid beforehand that leads to that climactic battle. And ultimately, that is the gigantic problem with the final fight in this movie, that it has a movie that was misguided from the get-go, where it has Rocky losing everything, becoming a mentor to someone, and then that mentor becomes, or mentee becomes, the villain.
I love you, man. You know that? You and me were supposed to be like this, Tommy. You blew it.
And that's just not very inspiring. It's not very compelling. And we end up in a street fight because the guy's mad at Rocky for something. None of it really adds up. None of it feels quite right. I mean, I guess it's fun to see Rocky in a street fight, but it's the climactic final battle when in the previous movie, Rocky ended the Cold War after beating Ivan Drago and giving an amazing speech. He ended the Cold War, and now he's boxing in the street fighting against some jerk that we don't care about. There's just nothing compelling about it. I mean, you see like him do these street spin moves and stuff. That's cool. But besides that, it just doesn't work, largely because the movie itself doesn't really work. Number 8, Rocky 3. Now, as I've said before, I'm not as high on Rocky 3 as a lot of other people are. And some of that does come down to the final fight, where the midsection of this film, you have Apollo go to Rocky, offer to train him. And so you have this big training montage of Rocky learning a new way of boxing, a bunch of new tactics, as well as that friendship, the bromance forming between the two of them. And that leads us into our final fight with Clubber Lang.
No, I don't hate Balboa, but I pity the fool.
That, of all of our final fights in all these movies, is the shortest of all of them. It's the fewest rounds. And they're trying to do something different, where normally it's about going the distance all the way to the end, who will win in the final round, all of that fun stuff. So this one, it was only 3-4 rounds that they go, but that kind of makes it feel anticlimactic, in particular when mid-fight Rocky decides his strategy is, I'm just gonna like let Clubber Lang punch me in the face so that I'll get mad and he'll exhaust himself. And literally Apollo's like, the guy that's supposed to be training him, that Rocky's supposed to be learning from, is like, what are you doing out there? Rocky's like, I know what I'm doing. It's strategy. He punches me in the face. He gets tired and I get angry. Getting punched in the face will make you angry. It also makes your brain not really work right. Also will knock you unconscious when it's someone like that punching you in the face. So it just didn't add up to me. The concept of how they decided to change the formula up doesn't really work for me. So for me, this one is a bit of a misfire. Number 7, Rocky 2. I'm sure this is a highly controversial placement because this is the movie where Rocky wins the belt, defeats Apollo Creed.
Yo, Adrian! I did it!
So you'd think maybe it would be higher up on the list, but I think the issue for me is that with the nature of the fight itself, the motivation that Rocky has in the movie, the win here doesn't really feel earned. And what I mean by that is the motivation that he's given throughout the film is he's a fool that spends all of his money, so he has to fight again to out-earn his foolish choices. And because they have a baby and Adrian goes, win! He decides he's going to win. That's not nearly as inspiring and compelling as what it was in the first film. But beyond that, the entire fight, Rocky's getting punched in the face. Like, Apollo shows up ready, trained, knowing this guy's a threat. And so he's just pummeling Rocky in the face. Power shots, jabs, hooks, all of it for 15 rounds straight. Rocky doesn't have any new tricks up his sleeve. There's nothing in Rocky's strategy that explains why he's able to win this time, except for the fact that Apollo doesn't have as much heart or something. So Rocky can just take punches forever. And the movie even introduces Apollo's fatal flaw that if they'd really built the fight around this, I think it easily could have gone way up on here. But the Apollo is fixated on, I need to destroy him to prove to everyone that I'm better than him. I can't just win by decision. I have to knock him out. So if the fight had been built around Creed is trying to be the showman, talking down to this guy and just trying to hit him in the head repeatedly, and Rocky goes in with his game plan is to avoid that and outboxes him knowing what Creed is trying to do, and therefore in the end is able to win through counter punches and things like that'd be great. That's not what happened. They just say, hey, Apollo wants to knock him out leading in and going into the final round, and Rocky can just take 1,000 punches to the face from the heavyweight champion of the world and not get knocked out and still get back up. It just didn't feel earned. And it's so important to the franchise as a whole that you really want that win to feel earned and not like, wow, Rocky just can take punches forever. Next up, Creed 3. And this is the trickiest one to place because I've only seen the movie one time, whereas every other movie on this list I've seen many, many, many times. And that takes such like wild swings with the direction of this fight that it's just totally different from any other fight on this list that makes it very difficult to place because I'm still processing what do I think about what Michael B. Jordan did during this sequence. So, as he stated in interviews before the movie came out, he took a lot of inspiration from anime and other sources and brought it into this fight and brought very much an artistic flair that is not present in any other Rocky Creed film and dropped it in this fight sequence. So, great final fights are metaphors for what's going on the inside of the characters. They're visual metaphors. It's a visualization of the conflict inside the characters. And Michael B. Jordan goes very literal with that, with the way that he visualizes the fight. They're in an arena and then it goes into like dream mode, showing what's going on, that it's just these two guys that know each other duking it out. And I don't know if I like that. It's interesting, it's different, it stands out, it's unique, but do I actually like it? Do I think it fits in the franchise? I'm not really sure yet. I appreciate that he took a swing. Did it land? I'm not quite sure for me as of yet. Some of the other stuff that Michael B. Jordan did in the fight with kind of the close-ups and kind of showing the characters, kind of noticing things in details and coming up with strategies. I actually really like that stuff. But when it goes full dream visualization, I just don't know. I don't know that I can buy into that. And so I can't put this one too high up on the list yet. Maybe when I rewatch it, I'll really buy into Michael B. Jordan's vision for this and think it does fit and it is a great continuation, a new addition to what we're doing here. At the moment, kind of pulled me out of the movie a bit, kind of pulled me out of the fight a bit. Bringing us into the top 5, Creed 2. And I really, really want to be able to put this one even higher up on this list because I love what this fight represents and the way that it's able to make the character arc more about the antagonist, really, than it is about the protagonist. And what I mean by that is the Dragos are given kind of this whole backstory about how they're fighting for the respect of the Russian higher-ups. And Ivan is using his son Victor as a tool the way that they used him as a tool. And throughout the course of this fight, Ivan realizes that he's using his son and that he realizes I care more about my son and his well-being than I do about these people that rejected us. And that's a lesson that he essentially learns from his son, who told him that earlier in the film. It's like, why are we with these people? Why are we with that woman that abandoned us? Like, I care about you. You care about me. Why do we care about what they think? And it's that kind of idea that's recurring all throughout the Rocky movies, and that kind of ties to the way we're wired as people, that we want the respect of the people that we respect. And Ivan respects them, and therefore has been living for their respect his whole life. And he realizes in this moment that it's something his son already realized, that like, there's no reason to respect those people. They don't care about me. That's very compelling. And even leads up to a moment that mirrors the failure of Rocky in the Apollo Drago fight, that Ivan throws in the towel to save his son. Conceptually, I love that. Conceptually, I love that as soon as the son starts to lose the fight, his mother walks out. All she cares about is what they can do for her. And when they start to embarrass her, she's out. And I love all of those notes. The actual execution of the idea, I think, could have been better. In particular, with the cutting, the swelling of the music, the sense of danger. Like, as you're watching Victor getting punched in the face, you don't feel like this guy's about to die. You don't feel like, and I think they needed to do something to introduce something about him where you clearly know something's off, that we see it and his dad sees it, and you go, that's not him anymore. He's about to get really hurt if this thing isn't ended. And they didn't do that. So it just kind of felt like a first draft of an idea, a first cut of the scene, rather than the developed version. I so want to put it even higher, but still, the ideas are good enough. It's an exciting enough fight where they show Adonis learning, growing from the new tactics he got in the desert to be able to counter, dodge, all this stuff that leads to a final victory in the end. In fourth place, Rocky IV, the most ridiculously over the top of the fights.
I must break you.
If you listen to interviews with Stallone about how they cut the scene and the sound effects, he literally said that they were like firing shotguns and clanging chains together in order to get just the biggest, most obnoxious sounds for every single one of the punches that lands or doesn't land.
Just to give you an idea how hard these guys were punching. Sometimes the punch didn't even land, but the head flew back anyway, like from the air or something.
As you're watching it, they're always punching each other in the face with these power shots where they're just like rearing back. Drago's picking people up. They're getting thrown across the ring.
The corner men were fighting each other. Drago picked up his promoter by the neck.
It is wild. It's crazy. It was the 80s, and as ridiculous as it is, I just love this fight.
From a technical standpoint, it's the worst defense I've ever seen in a boxing ring.
It is so fun. It's silly. It ends with Rocky giving a speech, a character who 2 movies earlier could not read cards to do a commercial. And now he's giving his speech to end the Cold War while wrapped in the U.S. flag.
If I can change, and you can change, everybody can change.
This is the 80s as a movie. It is insane. It's ridiculous. It is beautiful. It's fun. It kind of knows what it is, and it just balances the silly with the serious wonderfully. Manages to build this supervillain that can kill Apollo Creed in 2 rounds, and Rocky is the superhero that climbs mountains in the training in order to defeat this supervillain. So he's the superhero. It is out there compared to how grounded so many other movies in this franchise were, but it works for the movie that it was in. And it's a movie that gets elevated by, in a fight that gets elevated by the Creed films that bring it back down to the ground and give some character to these caricatures. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 9 final fights from the Rocky Creed films. My list is not the right list. as you can tell, is just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, I've got a bunch of these other Rocky videos that I've already done and that are coming out over the years. I've done various reviews of the movies, and then I'm dropping a bunch of rankings right now, the movies, training montages, all of that fun stuff. You can check it out right up here. In third place, Rocky Balboa. As I've said before, the best final fights are those that are visual representations of what's going on with each of the characters, and they're only as good as the setup that's come beforehand. And what I think this movie did so well was finding a new way to make Rocky an underdog. In the case of this one, it's simply time and age. That he's been retired a long time and he thinks he's got a little bit left in the tank. But they also give that arc to the Tarver character.
It doesn't over till it's over.
What's that from, in the 80s?
It's probably in the 70s.
Who is the champion, but no one respects him because he's never fought a true hardened champion. And so he just feels like the default guy on top. And so you create a scenario where someone who's known for being just this very hardened champion that won multiple underdog fights, won it later in life, and continued all throughout his 30s, kind of getting those victories, comes out of retirement, and each of them finds a way to give respect to the other through the fight. Each of them earns the respect of the audience through the fight. And that's what makes it so good. They come up with just that right scenario to where the champ shows up unprepared, he gets injured, Rocky shows up as someone known for having a very, very hard head that can take a bunch of punches, and the right set of circumstances happen to where Rocky can just beat the crap out of this champion while not actually beating the champion in the fight overall. And thus you kind of have two different victories that take place there. And that's when you have the best victories in these films, where it doesn't really matter if our hero wins or not. The point is that they went the distance, they gave it their all, and in doing so, won the respect of the other person as well as the crowd. That's what you get in this movie in a very different way than you got it in the original film, but it absolutely works for me. Our runner-up, Creed, and as I've said many times before, I think this movie as a whole was a perfect continuation of the Rocky franchise that found a way to do something interesting and new with it, show Rocky in a new light, as well as give us a new protagonist that has something that we actually want to see. And the final fight here really pays that off. And the little smart maneuver that they did with this movie is that in the early Rocky films, we saw Apollo Creed with his children, and they make Adonis the bastard son, the illegitimate son, the one that did not come from the family, not the ones that we saw in that movie, in the previous movies, but the one that was raised in a children's home, separate from all of that. So he has this chip on his shoulder. So he's grown up without the Creed name, and he's trying to figure out his own identity and constantly living with this idea of, my dad was this super famous person that I never knew, and I was like the leftovers. Was I a mistake? And they bring that into this fight to where he's just has to, like, this fight is that answer to that question. Can I live up to his name, or am I the leftovers?
Prove what? I'm not a mistake.
Am I this mistake? And they just wanted to give us a fight. And one of the things that's nice about the fight in particular, this one, is they start to be a lot more realistic than the fights in the Rocky movies, where Rocky's just getting pummeled in the head for 15 rounds and stays up. The boxing here is a lot more dodges, a lot more blocks, counter punches, rather than just always landing face shots. And so it just has a little bit more of a dynamic, real boxing vibe to it while being exciting. And building to kind of this payoff of what really has been going on in Adonis, him being vulnerable in those final moments. Like, I have to be able to finish this. I have to, for myself, to know who I am and why I matter. And at the same time, that kind of going back to Rocky, who is in his own fight with cancer, and Adonis is the one that convinced him to keep fighting. So Rocky's like, then you need to, I'm going to keep fighting. You got me to keep fighting. You got to keep fighting until this thing's over with. And so it found a way to once again create that underdog story with a compelling journey in the fight, all leading up to a big emotional payoff where what matters isn't who won, but earning respect for oneself and that of the respect of others. But coming in first place is the original Rocky. I've said it many times before. This is the greatest sports movie of all time. It created the template for all sports movies that have come since. It's the ultimate underdog story. And because all that, it's won Best Picture. It does everything right and created the formula that everybody's been copying for the last 47 years. And when you rewatch this film, it still works because that final fight is only as good as the setup that came before it. And the setup here is fantastic, where it's all about this guy that never feels like he took his shot. He was never given a chance. And finally, he has that moment where he can see, does he have what it takes? And he goes, they even have this scene beforehand, before the fight, where he tells Adrian, I know I can't win. I'm not in the same league as him. I just want to go the distance. No one's ever done that. And if I can do that, my life will be worth something. Like I actually have something to give if I can just go the distance. And so then you get the fight. Apollo doesn't take Rocky seriously. He's not really mean or rude to him because he doesn't view him as a threat until they're in the middle of that first round. And Rocky lands a punch and knocks Apollo over.
I don't believe it.
And in that moment, Apollo realizes, wait, this guy's for real. Duke has actually been warning Apollo of this the entire movie. Don't go with this guy. He's left-handed. He's a southpaw. I don't want you to mess with southpaws. Duke sees Rocky training and sees this guy's got punching power. He's going for the body like nobody. Like, Apollo, you need to check this out. He's serious. Oh, I'm serious too.
Hey, champ. You ought to come look at this boy you're going to fight on TV. Looks like he means business.
Yeah, I mean business too.
And he doesn't listen. And in a moment, Rocky lands one punch, and Apollo suddenly realizes this guy's a threat, and therefore, in another sense, earns his respect, and the whole vibe changes. And you go throughout the fight of that's what it's all about. Rocky learning or earning the respect of the people that he respects, learning to respect himself by going the distance. And even the way that it's set up, that all throughout the movie, it shows Rocky's this guy that goes for the body like no one else, famously punching meat in a meat locker and snapping the ribs. So how do you have a great final fight? You set something up early on. All throughout the movie, they're showing us punching meat, and it's interesting to watch him punching this meat. And then he starts doing that to a person. And Apollo is destroyed by the time we're going into the 15th round. Proper setup, payoff, proper character arcs. All of it is what you get in this movie that makes the final victory, the fact that he goes the distance, feel earned. All throughout the way, Apollo wasn't listening to Duke. All along the way, Rocky is shown to have something he's really good at. Mickey says, I always thought you had it, but you became a leg breaker instead.
Because you had the talent to become a good fighter. And instead of that, you became a leg breaker. Some cheap, second-rate loan shark.
It sets all this stuff up to pay off the fact that Rocky does belong in that ring, in that fight. That's where he belongs. He has that talent. He just never took his shot, never had that chance before. And that is such a satisfying journey. Even when he loses the fight, he doesn't care. He's not even listening. They're announcing who the winner is, and Rocky's just looking for Adrian and notices that her hat fell off.
Hey, where's your hat?
I love you.
He's paying attention to that. Her hat. Where's your hat? Not who won the fight. Because it doesn't matter in that moment. He's proven to himself that he has what it takes. That's such a great character arc journey message to send people of always just keep going. It doesn't even necessarily matter if you win, but did you give it your all? Did you give it your best shot? Did you take your shot? Beginning of the movie, when he was first asked to do the fight, he turns it down because he was scared. Like, I don't belong in the ring with that guy. I don't have what it takes. And by the end, he knows he has what it takes, and he believes in himself. So without question, it comes in at number 1. Remember, I got more Rocky rankings and reviews just like this one right over there. I did a real deep dive analysis of Rocky. It's called Why I Love Rocky. It's like 45 minutes long. Also ranked the movies, ranked the training montages, and more. It's right over there. Thank you so much for watching. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.